Hey everybody, Dark Skeleton here, and today we have two more Whispers of the Old God cards to go ahead and review, and I think these two are actually going to be somewhat impactful on the game. So first off, we have the Thistle T, a new Druid card, 6 mana, draw a card, add 2 extra copies of it to your hand. The first question anybody would be asking themselves is, why play Thistle Tea over playing Nourish? Because Nourish is, of course, 5 mana, choose 1, basically gain 2 mana crystals that are currently filled, so you can use it for hero power, or draw 3 cards immediately for 1 less mana. So why would you pay 6 mana to only have 1 effect, not having the flexibility, and to basically get 3 cards? Well, 2 reasons for that I can see. One is that you are playing a fatigue deck. You don't want to actually draw 3 cards. You want to get basically cards out of nowhere. Adding extra copies of it to your hand is a more powerful effect if you're playing that style of play, because that's effectively saying, okay, draw the card and then add 2 more copies of that card to my deck and draw them immediately. Which in Fatigue means like, hey, you have 3 Ysera's in your deck or something like that. That's pretty ridiculous. Or really 3 of any card. If you got 2 extra Naturalizes, that could be pretty crazy for Fatigue too. Actually, a Naturalize Fatigue deck that got more off Thistle Tea would be pretty ridiculous at milling your opponent. So in any case, that's one example. Basically pushing your opponent into Fatigue, grinding them down, playing a deck with 32 cards, pretty strong if you have the opportunity to go out and play this. The other case that I kind of hinted to a minute ago is if you can target a really big card with it, like Ysera. Just being able to get an insane amount of value. It's one thing to draw 3 random cards, but if you're drawing 3 of the same card and that card is going to be very powerful, then that can work out really well for you in those control matchups. But the problem is, you don't know what card is going to be drawn, or do you? The question is, how confident are you that the next card you draw is going to be super strong? I don't necessarily think it's going to happen, but they could add a card to the game, which basically guarantees that your next card drawn is going to be this card. Maybe as a battle cry effect, add a card to the top of your deck, and then the next turn you draw it. And with this, you could guarantee that that's going to be the card you get, for instance. Or you can just play it when you're on the last card in your deck, and you know that the last card in your deck happens to be Ragnaros, or happens to be at least Starseeker, although I'm not sure why you'd want 3 Golden Monkeys. And maybe to prevent fatigue, because it does add an extra card to your deck. But in any case, Thistle Tea does have potential in either of those cases. Control matchups where you're very confident about what the next card is going to be, and thus getting immense value out of this card. Or fatigue, or just really slow control matchups where you want to get extra cards to play, but you don't want to draw yourself closer to an empty deck. In those cases, Thistle Tea can be pretty good. I doubt it would be played in many other decks because Nourish isn't played, so in, like, say, a standard mid-range combo Druid, there's no way in hell Thistle Tea would get played. Something along the lines of Ramp Druid or Fatigue Druid at the very least, or Mill Druid. In any case, I think it's a pretty solid card. I will be playing it specifically in those decks, Fatigue or a very control-heavy ramp with no combo, or trying to play it at least, and I think it'll work out in some cases. Next up, the Twilight Summoner, otherwise known as one of the most powerful death rattles you can get in this game. A 4-mana 1/1, Death Rattle summon a 5/5 Faceless Destroyer. So, if you think about this card and its a pure stat value, you're getting 6/6 of stats. The problem is it's really slow. In some cases, like a Face Hunter will just say, okay, you summoned a 1/1, good for you, I'm just going to keep going face. But if you actually get to play this card out for its full value, that is really powerful. 6/6 stats for 4 mana, no drawback other than it's slow, is quite crazy. Obviously, the biggest weakness of this card is the silence. If you get owled with this card, you're going to be having a really, really sad day. There's just no question about that. Whether silence will be nerfed or not, who knows? I'm kind of leaning on they're not going to nerf it. because in some circumstances, like let's say fighting a Tyrian forging, it really is like the one answer to not get kicked out of the game immediately by, whoa, he got a 6/6 Divine Shield and then he gets an Ashbringer. That's pretty damn ridiculous. But what this card does say is that cards like N'Zoth the Corruptor are actually quite a bit more playable than had initially been thought. If you play a 4-mana Death Rattle that gets you a 5/5, allowing you to basically control the board as turns go on, maybe you Doomsayer into a Twilight Summoner into N'Zoth in the late game. Getting 1/1s that Death Rattle into 5/5s is pretty crazy. You play 2 of those a game. That's basically N'Zoth the Corruptor, summon 12/12 worth of stats just by playing 2 of these Twilight Summoners. And obviously, if you're going to be playing N'Zoth the Corruptor, you're also going to be playing Sylvanas Windrunner. There's a good chance you'll throw Cairn Bloodhoof into it. If GVG was still around, you could say Toshli. Toshli's still Death Rattle minion, technically, and 5/7 body is pretty solid. But yeah, this is just more icing on the cake for N'Zoth the Corruptor. Pretty solid on its own if you can afford to play that slowly. Playing Twilight Summoner is asking your opponent to go face. If you play Twilight Summoner, is your opponent going to just Zerg Rush you and blow you out of the game because you played a 1/1? Well, that's the problem you have to deal with. So if you're playing a control deck that can really slow things down, like something along the lines of Freeze Mage, or Murloc Paladin with Doomsayer, something around those archetypes, and then you play Twilight Summoner, that can be pretty good. I think this is a good card to play after you've Doomsayered, because at that point in time, tempo's still in your favor, and you can kind of afford to get this Death Rattle out. So in any case, I've been Dark Skeleton. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.